Okay, we have painted the field green, whatever, onto the fuselage. So this end is going to be dark wood, this end is going to be dark wood, so we need to mask that off now so that we can get stuck in and do that. But also this section here is the very pale grey, almost white colour that we're doing the stanchions in, and various other bits and pieces, the engine cowlings and so on. So we need to mask that off as well. So that is the next job. Now here it's fairly easy because we've got lines marked into it. At this end there is nothing there saying where this should start or end, so I'm referring to my painting guide, which shows that the termination point of the rigging line there is just into this great green section. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use that as a reference first, and then we can go all the way round from there. So by putting the tape on my grid, I can make sure that I'm cutting it square. So I'm just going to cut that end piece off, and we need .20. I'll get that out of the way. We'll use that for something else, no doubt. So for 20, that's 2 blocks. Now I know whichever edge that I use is completely straight, so it doesn't really matter. I just want to check how far in that is. So I think that's about right. So that's my start point. I can use that offcut now. There we go. There we go. Now I've forgotten to say, but I have actually sealed this with a coat of A-stand gloss, and that is purely to help make sure, because we've used Vallejo paint, that we don't have any issues later on with the paint lifting with the masking tape. Okay, so underneath needs to be done next. I'm just going to take it off my helping hands. It was on my helping hands while I was spraying it, to be honest. So what to do here? The instructions seem to suggest that it's that wood colour underneath as well. And actually I hadn't noticed, but there is a dimension there, 75 millimeters. 75 millimeters. That means I am out actually by just a little over 0.5 millimeter. So that wasn't that was not a bad guess for eyeballing it, was it? Right, okay, so if we do that and reset this, then we know we've got it perfect. So despite the fact that it's showing that it's got stitches, they want us to paint it with the wood effect, so that's what we'll do. Well, actually, I'm not that far off on this side. Looks like that's not quite straight then, doesn't it? Or maybe this isn't. There we go. So that's that done. The top here is going to be not too hard, I don't think. So let's just measure the length of that. 4.5 centimeters. So if I do 5, 3, 4, 5, we know we're okay. Now, there might be a bit of a curve to this. I don't know. Yeah, there is. Can you see? There's a bit of a curve to it. So what we're going to have to do is go over it and then cut it to shape. So I'm not sure I'll be able to do that on camera. But we'll have a go. Be very careful here that we don't slip and put a nice line across the paintwork. Nearly there. Okay, so that's our masked edge. And then we need to mask up that edge there. Like so. Okay, you get the idea. I'll do the other side and then we'll have a look at this. Right, we've masked off the areas that need to be painted up next. I just want to protect the paint that we've put down and make sure that there's no accidental overspray or anything like that. So I'm going to use some cling film for that task. So about so much. So we can simply wrap this and use some masking tape offcuts just to hold that in place, and what I'm doing is masking it to the masking tape that I've already put down. There we go. There we go, and then we just check for any gaps. A little bit of a gap there at the top. Oh, I think I've got some masking tape off cut I can use on that. Yeah. There you go. Okay, I'll do that section next. So there we have it. That is our fuselage masked for the next step. We'll probably leave the masking on while we do the wood effect painting as well. So we want to act as quickly as possible because I don't want the masking on any longer than it needs to be. So my priority is to get the paint down as quickly as we can. The wood on our fuselage is a dark wood, so we're going to start it off having primed in white, obviously, with khaki brown, and that's going to set the right base tone, I think, for the wood effect that we need to do. So without further ado, let's get that on. Are drying. I've come to do the next stage in the dark wood, and then I've realised I've made a bit of a mistake, and actually this top section here is dark wood as well. So this that I've masked off, painted green and then masked off, needs to be dark wood, whereas the sides remain green from what I can see in the instructions. So when I've looked at the instructions, I've missed that bit. I don't know how, because it's fairly clear. So yeah, just having a senior moment, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the oil on this back bit here. Then we're going to have to mess around and unmask and remask this section, I think. But that's fine. It's not a big problem. We're just going to have to put that base paint down before we can do the front end. But let's crack on with the back end while we can. So what we've done, just as a quick reminder, is we've put khaki down as our base colour for that. So what I want to do is do the oil brush a bit next, which is going to be dark brown, which is MiG 3512. Right, so we're going to have a look at this tail section and do it in the dark wood. Same technique that we've used in the cockpit. I think the only comment I'd want to add is when you're doing dark wood, the more paint you put on, the darker it becomes. So if you're not sure, if you've never done it before, put a little bit on and then you can always add to it, is sort of my general rule. We'll start with that and see how we get on. Got our faithful sponge here. So now, once we've got an even coverage like we have now, pretty much, we can then start putting some darker areas in, and that just helps with the overall look if it's a little bit uneven. By going the other way, we can elongate them a little bit. Okay, that is not too bad. I think I'm going to want it a little bit darker than that though. So I'm going to put a little bit more on. And you just keep working it in, and if you decide you've overdone it and you don't like it and you've spoilt it, get your thinners out, strip it back, start again. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to carry on doing that all the way around. Having thought about it, it suddenly occurred to me that this is a good way of showing it as different panels. So I'm actually going to do the dark wood effect just as we've just done on the tail on the front end as well. Then we'll unmask it and do that separate section in its own right. So I'm going to crack on doing that, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. The oil brusher paint on, and we've done the sponge to give us the sort of wood grain effect. I'm now going to go around with a detail brush and put some knots in and some little details and bits and pieces, exactly as we've done before on the inside, using the same colour as we've done before, and that just allows us to add a little bit of interest and authenticate the wood effect a little bit, hopefully. Right, done what I wanted to do with the wood graining, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a filter using clear orange and clear red, and try and put a little bit of a hue on it, and sorry I just knocked the camera, and seal it all in, and it'll give it a bit of a satin finish. which will be brilliant for our next steps. So I'm going to do a mix because I find the red is just a little bit too red. If you add a bit of orange, it just tints it down a little bit. So we need to give them a good shake, minute maybe so. Start by putting some clear red in. Then we'll put some clear orange in. We'll just give that a mix, see if it looks right. And it's just really a matter of playing around until you've got something that looks like the colour that you want. And that looks fairly decent to me. So let's get that in the airbrush and see what it looks like on. And you can thin this if you want, but there's no need. I've found it's pretty good straight from the bottle. Nearly forgot. Always take the needle protection off. There we go, that's working. So let's get going. I'm trying to go with the panel direction. Okay, the last thing that I need to do before we can seal this, clear coat it, is to put some aluminium down on some areas here. There's little sort of walkways next to the engine that need to be painted in. I'm going to use, just out of interest as much as anything, this ICM acrylic paint. It's 1023 aluminium, and because I'm going to brush paint this in, I'm interested to see how much control I get with this. So yeah, first time I've used this particular shade of ICM paint, so we'll be interested to see how it goes. Well, I have to say the aluminium is performing really nicely. The paint is lovely, very nice and controllable. It's going on lovely. So I'm going to finish this up and then I'll come back to you when we're ready for the next step. Right, aluminium painted on, that was the last colour to go down. So I'm going to seal everything using this acrylic varnish. It's a gloss, but we'll do some washes and then we'll finally seal it with a satin coat, and then we'll be able to crack on with some other bits and pieces. I also want to put the dead eyes in, ready for the rigging. I haven't decided whether I want to leave them metal or whether I'm going to paint them, but I think I'm most likely going to leave them metal. I think that'll just add to the finished look of everything. So without further ado, I'm going to get some airbrushing done. Right, time to add all these eyes. I've done some already. It's very, very difficult to show you this on camera because they are just so tiny. But I'll talk you through the process so you understand what we're doing. To start with, all the location points that Wingnut Wings kindly put into this for you, which are these little areas here. You can see they put some little indentations in. We've drilled them out with a small drill bit, big enough to allow one of the eyelets to go in. Now the eyelets themselves are a little long, so the next process is to put them in tweezers holding the head and just trim them down a bit. I'm using an old pair of sprue cutters to do that. Then we dip into some medium CA because we want it to fill the hole, and then we plop the eyelet in the hole. And that's the process. There's about 40 of them that need to go on the bottom wing alone. So we have lots to do, plus we'll need to add some on the floats, the tail as well. So there's plenty of this to do. What we'll then do, once they're all in, is we'll build up the engines, but we'll put the engine case in, and then we'll probably add the rigging cable and the tubes, and make sure that we've got them all on before we start the next stage, which is fitting out the wing struts. Well, that's all my first set of eyes in. 59 eyes and one broken drill bit later. The wing is done. There's a few on the underside as well, but they're in that 59 count. So the next thing I want to do is put in the engine frame. So let's have a look at that. What I'm interested to see is how much space we have for applying the rigging once these frames are in. So let's start by putting the first one in, and then I'm going to have a bit of an inspection. The rigging lines are, with the exception of that one, are pretty much well away from this. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so just pop the other one in for now without gluing them into place. What I'm really interested in is we have a dead eye that is almost right next to this back leg. Yeah, I've got casing to go around. So how does that work? Let's get the casing out and fit that and see what happens. So actually there's a little hole in the casing. If I show you, you can see how that eye is cleared. Now, I have built my casings up because I didn't want to assemble them round the casing like that. I can put the engine in with the casing around it, so rather than plopping it all together like the instructions have said, what I'm actually going to do is clip this inside so that it's in there. We can then just run a bit of glue in there and then that can plop on top. So we're just going to push this one in. There's a couple of little points there, little pins, which go into these little holes here. So it clips into place really nicely. So I'm going to just do that first. There you go. So that is in now. So we'll just get a little bit of glue in behind there, cement that in. And we'll put some glue in this one as well. Otherwise I'm going to forget. Okay, so just let that dry for a sec. We've got a little piece that we need to add in there, so let me find that because I've already pre-painted that somewhere. Right, so we need to put a little bit of glue into here. I'm using the slightly thicker glue because it dissolves the paint better. There we go. I can plop that in there like so. Now I have nearly forgotten to paint the inside of these in aluminium, so I need to go and do that. And also the insides of the rest of the covers. So I'm going to go and do that while all this glue is drying, and then I will come back to you.